Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? The forum is about to begin. Honorable Dr. Irma Ahmad, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and Assalamualaikum. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this forum. In this occasion, we would like to have a forum regarding sex education should be taught in school or not. Before the forum begins, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Syahir bin Muhammad Shahrizan as the moderator for this forum. And I will introduce to you our speaker presenter for this forum. This is Miss Shura. She is the student representative of UITM and she will be our first panel for this section. For our second panel, her name is Miss Fatin, the student representative from UKM. For our third panel, her name is Miss Sarah, the student representative from USM. And for our last panel is Miss Najiha, the student representative also from UITM. Without further ado, I would like to welcome the presenter to deliver their talk on this topic. Alright, Miss Shura, are you ready? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Syahir. So, Assalamualaikum and a very good day I bid to Dr. Irma Ahmad, to a member of the panels, to the moderator, as well as to the audiences watching this forum. So my claim as the first supporting panel for today's topic is that sex education is a must in schools because it helps kids to be more comfortable to say no. So the evidence that I would like to bring to support my claim is a statement made by the Voice of the Children chairman, Shamila Sekaran, which stated that sex education will teach students how to say no and how to guide them away from sexual activity which relates to pregnancies. And this statement was taken from the Star Online established in 2019. So in my point of view, this can be seen into two contexts. So the first one is between teenagers with their partners or their close ones. And the second context is between teenagers with strangers or unknown people. So I first explain about the first contact, which is for the kids or teenagers to be able to say no to their close ones, especially their partners. So the close ones here are referring to family members, relatives, or even friends. And sex education will increase one's knowledge about sexual assault, sexual harassment, as well as sexual limitations. So this means that kids will be able to understand the physical and verbal limits one has towards him or her. So how this knowledge will help boost students' confidence to say no is that they will realize that they are not alone. And in addition, helplines will also be mentioned during sex education sessions if they were facing any problem that needs to be upheld. So for instance, if a close relative tends to commit the action of sexual harassment towards the kids, he or she will know that the right thing to do is to inform the parents and not to be silent. If the parent tends to be oppressive, the kid can ask for help from the helplines given during sexual education sessions. So moving on, when I say partners, I'm very sure there exists a very strong sensual feelings between them, or also known as love. So, however, as I've mentioned before, the Voice of the Children chairman Shamila Sekaran said that sex education in schools will help teenagers, it will help to guide them away from sexual activities, especially the ones that relate to pregnancies. So how is this so? This is able to happen because teenagers will learn about setbacks, consequences they need to face of premarital sex and teenage pregnancies. Furthermore, I believe that sex education should be taught in schools because the current sexual reproductive health education in schools is insufficient to educate the knowledge of the students on sexual issues. So next, the second context that I would like to discuss here is that teenagers will be able to say no to strangers, while most kids are naive, especially when they are still in schools and are still immature. So this may be the cause of them to be unsure of certain actions that is considered as sexual harassment. This is where sex education can play its role to explain to children about boundaries and limits that others have towards them. So this may help them to be careful and cautious. So based on the aspect I have explained earlier, it shows that students will be aware of the sexual behaviors that one might commit towards them. So this is because sex education in schools would be acknowledging about the parts of the body which are considered as sensitive, especially all private parts. So teachers who are teaching for sex education would be guiding the students on what should be done when they have been touched unwillingly without their permission, or also known as sexually harassed. For example, students might not know whether when someone touches any part of their body unwillingly, such as their waist, is already considered as sexual harassment. Thus, knowledge gained from sex education can help students to be cautious of their surroundings and seek for help as soon as possible. So to sum up my claim, sex education improves students' self-efficacy because it helps teenagers to have more knowledge on sexual issues, which will increase their confidence to stand up for their rights, to say no whenever they are uncomfortable. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for our good information from Asyura. So I got one statement that I want to clarify, which is sex education when quarantine, kids will say no. Because the ones that might do this action towards them could be their family members. According to the news that I got from the Star, said that 95% of the cases their sexual abuser are people known to them. Mostly the abuser are their fathers or their stepfathers. Based on Datuk Dr. Ahmad Singh, a consultant pediatrician who has worked with sexually abused children for over 3 decades, said that in Malaysia, the primary abuser is the father, the second primary abuser is the father, and the third primary abuser is also the father. So according to this article, not that the children do not know how to say no, but they're afraid to say because that the one that sexual harass them is their own family. And I don't think that by having this sex education at school will lead to anything. This is because we cannot change about our people's mind about sex. They will do it even they study about that at school. So what do you think about this statement, Ms. Shura?
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Farah. So in my point of view, kids might not be able to say no in that kind of situations whereby their parents or their family members are the one doing that awful actions towards them. But at least these children know that they're not alone. There are other alternatives that they can do, like asking for help, using the helplines given during the sex education sessions held in their schools. At least students would know that where to seek for help when they are in trouble and has no one to depend on, especially when their own family refuses to listen to them. So just think about it. It would be much more miserable if sex education is not implemented in schools, because if cases like these happened, students would not know who to approach and how to approach the helplines associated to help victims of sexual harassment. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you to our first panel for such interesting point of view. Like have been said by the first panel, she said that sex education helps kids to be more comfortable to say no. The first panel in this sense suggests that sex education increases self-efficiency, helping teens to have more sexual awareness that will make them say no when they feel uncomfortable. Now, we will continue with our second panel. Miss Fatin, you may start now.
Thank you to the moderator. Assalamualaikum to Dr. Irma Ahmad and the fellow audience. As a second panel for today, I will be talking on why sex education does not encourage sex but raises awareness. In modern days, because of the wide exposure of the internet, television, print, children have easier access to sexually explicit content. Hence, they tend to gain knowledge based on their age and understanding. According to Peter DeWitt, sex education is a process of obtaining information by forming the attitudes and beliefs of sex, sexual identity, relationship, and intimacy. Sex education will be instructed by people of ethical or moral plane. This can be a great opportunity for the kids to learn and ask questions about topics related to reproduction, how life begins, how life develops, and also marriage laws to know what are their rights. Sex education can eliminate the myths and provide them with the correct information. This is very important as the kids are growing every day and will go through many bodily changes. It can be in terms of changes in their body as well as questions about their sexuality. By giving them the right information, they will have a healthy and correct perception about their bodies as well as the bodies of others. If I may give an example, the topic of periods has been circulating throughout the internet, and it has said that girls should not expose themselves to boys that they are currently menstruating. Why, you may ask? Based on the statement given, it is said that boys will imagine things if a girl is on her period, and that statement should be debunked. Girls should have the exposure to talk. Girls should have the exposure and mentality that it is okay to talk about their periods, especially when it comes to period cramps. And women are not responsible for the man's imagination. And this is where sex education can help them with that. Some may ask, what are the awareness of sex education? Well, the subjects that will be talked to in sex education will give the students a realistic and factual information on how to uplift the odds in the society. Therefore, the student will gain information about safe sex and decrease teenage pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, sexual transmitted diseases such as HIV and AIDS. Based on the article that I read by NST, let me emphasize that again. A well-educated young woman thought that by kissing someone could make her go pregnant. She did not know that by having sexual intercourse would make her go pregnant, and then it was too late for her now as she was caught abandoning her newborn baby. Ladies and gentlemen, is sex education really not important for the kids to learn? Or are you just in doubt that the fact that you don't want your children to be advanced on knowing what is sex? Well, you are not wrong. However, as I said, sex education is not at all about sexual intercourse. The context of sex education is so much more than that. Lastly, sex education teaches children how to recognize abuse and when to say yes or no. As Ms. Asyura has said before, sex education will teach the children on how to say no to people. If I may add, sex education teaches the students to build respect for themselves in terms of their boundaries as well as their emotional well-being. Indeed, kids will somehow not know how to say no. This is due to them not knowing which is right and which is wrong. Well, this is where sex education comes into place. In fact, sex education will teach students on communication skills and help kids to develop the emotional adaptability to handle rejection when it comes from them expressing their desires. In addition, it can teach kids how to reject sexual advances and how the use of drugs and alcohol can increase a higher risk of sexual advances, as people under the influence of drugs and alcohol will become very vulnerable. In conclusion, sex education helps kids gain information about themselves, knowing who they are as a person, and able to teach them on how to love and respect themselves. The perception of people thinking that sex education will only increase their desire in having sex is not true. And the content of sex education is more than that. And that is all from me. Thank you.
That was a great explanation and insight from your point of view, Ms. Fatin. However, can you please clarify some of the parents' concerns? According to a psychological expert, teenagers' enthusiasm is much more extreme compared to the inquisitive toddlers, since adolescence is the age of worldly curiosity. By relating to this fact, it is found that teenagers seldom engage in the sexual activity out of curiosity. Therefore, from the parents' lenses, sex education will only provide exposure to the children about sex, as not all kids are ready or mature enough yet to talk about this. Don't you think that with the introduction to sex education syllabus would encourage the target adopters more to engage in the sexual activity? So, do you mind on giving us your thoughts for this matter of concern, Ms. Fatin?
Yes. Thank you for your opinion, Ms. Najiha. This is my point of view based on your question. As I have said before, sex education is not about teaching students to have sex, but to help them understand and raise awareness. Another point to add, sex education are factual information about their bodies, state of mind, and also what are the consequences when engaging with sexual activities. To help the parents to understand more, Advocate for Youth has stated that sex education will teach kids on having a mutually faithful monogamous relationship where marriage is the expected standard of sexual activities. It will also teach the kids that the context of having sex outside of marriage is likely to have more harmful psychological side effects. Additionally, sex education will teach young children to reject sexual advances and attaining self-sufficiency before engaging in a sexual activity. I hope that I clarified clearly enough and answered your question. Again, thank you, Ms. Najiha, for your question.
Very impressive to our second panel, and thank you very much for your thought for this topic. Like have been said by the second panel, sex education does not encourage sex but raise awareness. In this context, the second panel means that sex education offers knowledge about themselves, understanding who they are as a person, and also teaching them how to love and value themselves. The idea that people believe that sex education can only boost their desire to have sex is not valid, and there is more to the quality of sex education than that. To move forward with our forum, I will now give a space to our third panel to give her opinion regarding this topic.
Thank you, moderator. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Madam Irma. So here are my claim about I'm against for this sex education is being implemented in school. First, high cost to implement sex education in school. On my research finding, the federal government of USA had invested over $175 million annually in abstinence only until marriage program. These programs are required to withhold information on contraception and condom use, except for information on failure rates. Abstinence only programs have been found to contain scientifically inaccurate information, changing data on topics such as condom efficacy, and promote gender stereotypes. An independent evaluation of the federal program, several systematic reviews, and cohort data from population-based surveys find little evidence of efficacy and evidence of possible harm. In contrast, the comprehensive sexuality education program have been found to help teens delay initiation of intercourse and reduce sexual risk behavior. Abstinence-only policies violate the human rights of adolescents because they withhold potentially life-saving information on HIV and other SITs. So I don't think we in Malaysia need to implement this sex education at school because it will cost a lot of money to use. Second, it will increase the student curiosity to practically have sex. Early sexual activity has negative consequences for young people. Youngsters who become sexually active enter an arena of high-risk behavior that leads to physically and emotionally damage. Each year, influenced by combination of youthful assumption and invisibility and lack of guidance. Millions of youngsters ignore those risks and suffer the consequences. It is challenging to ensure high-quality instruction at so many grade levels, and there is a strong possibility that these uncoordinated pieces will leave students unprepared to make good decisions in their teen years. It can lead the children to have more curiosity about sex and sometimes can make them do something bad. Having this sex education can lead a number of sexual active for teenagers, and it will be no good if we have this sex education at school. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sarah, for the amazing opinion. So, I would like to say a few words. How can you be so sure that sex education will increase the curiosity of the students? This defines the purpose of the education on why children should learn it. Based on the research by UNESCO on how sex education can influence the behavior, it was found that 87 studies from around the world found that none of the programs led to an early sexual activities among young people. Young people can be more careful and responsible when it comes to sexual intercourse. If you don't mind me asking, I would like to know what is your take on that, and does sex education still be increasing the kids to have sex?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fatin. Why I've been so sure about sex education will lead to student curiosity to have sex is because, as you can see, a lot of explicit web, as you all know that this kind of web always making an awful video, and one of them is about sex. And as you all know, the reason why they do that because they really obsessed with this kind of thing. I watched at the YouTube. They doing the talk with one of the people that enjoy doing this kind of content because they want to know the reason why them really obsessed with this doing the video about sex, and the result is really shock for me. As they mentioned, sex education at school is the thing that make them really obsessed with making that kind of content. And I hope that I'm answering your question, Ms. Fatin. Thank you.
What a bright idea from our third panel, and thank you very much. Our third panel said that sex education will increase the student curiosity to practically have sex. What we can conclude from the third panel idea is that getting sex education will result in a lot of teens becoming sexually active, and it will not be ideal if we had this sex education at school. And last but not least, our last panel for this forum will give her idea based on this topic.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our lecturer, Madam Irma Ahmad, the moderator of the day, honorable panelists, as well as our fellow audience. It is a great honor to be invited and given an opportunity to share my point of view regarding today's topic, which is sex education. Do we really need sex education in school? I would like to put forward my main point of view, which is it is not necessary to have sex education in school since providing an in-depth sex education is the responsibility of the parents. So from what have been explained by the panelists before me, it is claimed that sexual education is mainly focusing on the knowledge of physical development, intimacy, sexuality and relationships, and as well as development of skills that allow a person to make better choice concerning sex and their sexual health. So the real question is, ladies and gentlemen, why do this sensitive topic should be covered in schools when the real responsibility to share this kind of sensitive and privacy related information should be considered as parental rights to educate their own children? Among 1,752 parents questioned, about more than half of the parents agrees that it is inappropriate to teach children about sex, while others think it should be the parents' choice to inform their children, as according to a survey conducted by Baby Child Organization website. So this shows that parents have their own way to approach their child about this sensitive subject and want to control what their children know, even more so at a very young age. Besides that, ladies and gentlemen, according to Dr. Gary L. Campbell, the author of Promoting Positive Racial Teacher-Student Classroom Relationships, the primary reason parents make good teachers is because they understand how to develop a positive relationships with children. So based on this expert view, we can say that parents do make great teachers. Thus, it would be much more effective and educational if sex education is being taught by the parents themselves as compared to the teachers at school. On the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring your attention to a protest of a bill that mandates sex education in Washington public schools on 10th of March 2020, where dozens of parents were involved in the protest. The protesters are of the view that conversation about this sensitive topic should only be kept at home, as they do not know the reality that is being taught to their kids at school, and the syllabus may not be the way they want that topic to be delivered to the kids. On top of that, it is also believed that this subject has gone far and beyond what schools should be teaching children. So it can be seen here that what is worrying parents the most is the way the content of sex education is being delivered by the teachers at school. And it should be the parents' decision whether or not to allow their children access to this subject. So before I conclude my points, would any of the panels want me to clarify anything regarding my point of view?
Yes, Ms. Najiha. Well, thank you for your clear and informative elaboration, Ms. Najiha. However, I would like to clarify certain aspects based on your explanation earlier on. So I figured out from the official journal of the American Journey of Pediatrics in 2016, stating that children have been shown to prefer an authorized professional who is open and non-judgmental to discuss about the content in sex education. Well, it was said that students feel more comfortable with discussions to address knowledge, questions, worries, or even misunderstandings about the related topics of sex education. Don't you think it gets awkward when parents are the one doing the talk about the contents in sex education, as you know, kids might feel shy and also uncomfortable? So do you mind explaining your thoughts about this? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Asyura, for the question. I believe that this might not only be Ms. Asyura's concern, but also the supporters of sex education in schools. Ladies and gentlemen, a study of Irene, University of California, found that parents nowadays spend more time with their children as compared to the parents in the mid-60s did. So the more time spent means that the parents are engaging more into their child's life, and they are being more open to their children. Plus, they know the strength, the weaknesses, and their child's development better than teachers. Therefore, parents absolutely know what works best to educate their child about sensitive issues or privacy-related matters. So instead of sharing or asking questions to an outsider about sex, I think children would be more open to discuss it with someone who know them inside out better. Thus, I believe that children shall not feel uncomfortable in discussing the content of sex education with their parents. I guess my explanations have clarified Ms. Asyura's concern. Therefore, as a conclusion, I would like to stress again that providing the knowledge about sexual education is the responsibility and the rights of the parents. It is not the teacher's job. This should be the parents' choice to inform their child, and it is proven that parents can educate better and more effectively concerning this sensitive topic. So that is all from me. Thank you.
Such a good perspective from our last panel. Like have been said by our last panel, she said that providing an in-depth sex education is the responsibility of the parents. What we can infer from the last idea of the panel is that parents are concerned about the quality of the sex education being provided by school teachers, and it should be decision of the parents whether to allow access to this subject or not. Finally, we come to the end part of our forum. Before ending our forum, I would like to conclude all of the panel point of view regarding the topic. To conclude all of our four panel regarding their opinion, I can say that we can agree to disagree as there are pros and cons regarding this topic. We can see here different people have their own way in thinking and receiving ideas. Hence, everyone have their own perspective which they believe is good for them. Last but not least, we would like to say thank you to you. To sorry. Last but not least, we would like to say thank you to the presenter for the informative and interesting idea. Hopefully, the forum will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.